Hold on to your emotions and try not to scream. Peppa and her friends might be in serious danger because Madame Gazelle has just revealed her secret. Are you ready to see the proof that Peppa's teacher is actually an evil vampire? Garlic. Let's start with the clue that revealed her weakness. In the episode Wildflowers, released in Season 8, Madame Gazelle takes the kids on a trip to the woods, all while making up a fake excuse that she just wanted to show them flowers. Mr. Bull, who probably has been suspicious of her since the very beginning of the show, finds a way to tag along, pretending he just wants to learn. But the truth is, Mr. Bull is there to protect the children. In the middle of the episode, the little ones show Gazelle a special flower. Penny Polar Bear says that flower smells just like her mom's cooking, and that's when the teacher steps back and explains that it's a garlic plant and that she doesn't like that type of vegetable. Maybe she didn't know this, but garlic is one of the most well-known vampire weaknesses around the world. It's how people protect themselves. This is such an important detail that it might just confirm all of our theories about this character. And if you want even more proof that Madame Gazelle might be a terrible monster, stay right here with us. Go grab your popcorn because this is the start of another Cinewave. Evie. Another big sign that Madame Gazelle might have awakened her dark powers has to do with the birth of Evie Pig. The newest little piggy might actually be in more danger than anyone else. The sad truth is that vampires are often drawn to babies and feel the urge to bite these innocent little ones, which means Evie might be getting hunted by Peppa's teacher. But if that's true, why hasn't Madame Gazelle done anything to her own students? That's why we go back to the episode Wildflowers. In that story, she brings the class to the forest, but she didn't know the garlic plant was growing in that garden. If she had known, there's no way she would have stepped into that place. Don't you agree? In that same episode, Mr. Bull suddenly appears out of nowhere in the middle of class and finds a way to follow the kids. If you think back to the entire series, you'll notice that Mr. Bull always finds an excuse to be at Madame Gazelle's school, even though none of his kids go there. Have you ever wondered why the school roof has never really been fixed, even though Mr. Bull has repaired it many times? It's because he messes up on purpose so he can stick around to protect the kids. And yes, he's the one who planted the garlic in the garden to drain Madame Gazelle's powers. That's why none of the kids have ever been harmed. They've been protected by Mr. Bull all along. But will Evie be able to escape this vampire's evil plans? We'll have to find out in future episodes. Mirror. If you still don't believe Madame Gazelle is actually a vampire, then you probably haven't seen the Halloween episode Pumpkin Party, when all the kids wear costumes and head to a celebration at school. At one point, Susie Sheep, who's dressed as a vampire, goes to talk to Madame Gazelle, and in that moment, we only see Peppa's best friend reflected in the mirror. The narrator even says that Madame Gazelle has no reflection. For those who don't know, this is one of the classic ways to spot a vampire. And during that whole conversation, the teacher says Susie's costume reminds her of her old hometown. In other words, she wasn't born in England. These are all clues. Susie's costume, the missing reflection, and their chat are clear references to the Dracula story. In the legend, Dracula moves to England from another country, just like Madame Gazelle. And since the teacher says the costume reminds her of her old town, that means she came from somewhere where vampires are common. She can only be talking about Transylvania. It's amazing that the easiest way to recognize a vampire happens to be one of Madame Gazelle's features. Now, nobody has an excuse not to admit she's a real legendary creature haunting the town. Would you want to take classes with Madame Gazelle knowing she's a vampire? Comment #Gazelle so we can get to know each other. Age. Of course, the biggest piece of evidence that Madame Gazelle is a vampire is her age. She's been around longer than anyone else would consider normal, and the clues are everywhere. In the episode Time Capsule, we see that Madame Gazelle used to be the teacher of Peppa's parents, and the parents of all her friends. And in the episode Madame Gazelle's House, we find out she planted a pine tree when she was already elderly. But pine trees take decades to grow, and yet the tree is now several meters tall, and Madame Gazelle is still alive and well. There's also a painting of Madame Gazelle's husband in her home. He also appears at the Science Museum wearing a completely different outfit. In the picture at her house, he's wearing a suit and a top hat. But at the museum, Mr. Gazelle is shown wearing an ancient military uniform that was worn over 200 years ago. So why is there a painting of him at the museum? The only possible answer is that he was an important figure in the past. And if that's true, then it means Mr. Gazelle lived for centuries, just like vampires who are immortal. Do you think the people in Peppa's town have never noticed how strange Madame Gazelle really is? Cold. In the episode Sun, Sea, and Snow, Madame Gazelle drops all pretense and shows just how powerful she really is. In this episode, everyone in town decides to go on a beach trip for a fun day out. So far, so good. But everybody knows that a day at the beach needs to be warm and sunny. That way, you can wear swimsuits and enjoy the heat. Well, That's not how Peppa's teacher sees it. The night before, there's a snowstorm, meaning it's freezing cold, and no one wants to get in the water. The only character strong enough to handle the nearly frozen sea is Madame Gazelle, and she does it like it's nothing. In fact, the show gives us another glimpse of her powers when Mummy Pig also goes into the water but quickly runs out, shivering like crazy. Meanwhile, Madame Gazelle, who's supposed to be a sweet old lady, stays calm and steady as if she barely feels the cold. Let's not forget that vampires are known for having cold blood, meaning their bodies are naturally freezing, which only helps prove that Madame Gazelle really is a vampire. This just shows how powerful she is. No normal person would be able to swim in water that cold. Then again, maybe you could. Want to try jumping into a pool with below zero temperatures just to see? Just be careful not to catch a cold. House. In the episode Madame Gazelle's House, there's something really strange going on that shows how Madame Gazelle is truly a magical creature. Right at the start of the story, Peppa and George slip on the floor, which is tilted. But in the very next scene, Peppa is walking up a ramp that's slanted in the opposite direction. That makes no sense at all. Later in the episode, we find out the floor is making people slip because a giant tree is pushing the house to one side. Up to that point, it's easy to accept that the tree is the reason the house is tilting. But then Peppa gets to another part of the building, and the floor is slanting the other way again. If the tree is pushing the house to the left, then everything inside should logically tilt to the left too. But that's not what happens in the episode. The only explanation is that Madame Gazelle's house is actually a magical place full of traps, just like Dracula's castle. Another important detail, which almost no fan has noticed, are the cracks in the walls. Madame Gazelle says all the walls are damaged because of the tree she planted, but that's a problem because if a pine tree like that takes decades to grow, then her house should have collapsed a long time ago. So what does that mean? Could it be that Madame Gazelle's house is actually a magical castle? And hey, are you going to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications? The real magic is knowing there are new videos here every single day. Strength. Vampires are known as powerful creatures with truly impressive magical abilities. They're not just monsters who bite people. One of the most common vampire powers is super strength, and believe it or not, Madame Gazelle definitely has it. Let's start with the fact that even though she's supposed to be very old, the character is full of energy. It's like she's secretly super young. But we get to really see how strong Peppa's teacher is in the episode Bat and Ball, when Madame Gazelle decides to teach her students how to play baseball. When it's her turn to bat, she hits the ball with so much power that it flies up the hill, an unbelievable distance from where they were. Then the ball hits the school roof, smashes the tiles, and bounces all the way back to the field, which, let's remember, was super far away. That means the teacher is incredibly strong. Peppa even asks, "Aren't you too old to play, teacher?" But Gazelle just answers that she'll never be old enough. Of course she's a vampire! No one can hit a ball like that unless they had magical powers. But what do you think? The Gazelles. Now let's talk about them. The Rock Gazelles, Madame Gazelle's sisters. Could they be vampires too? Honestly, this is yet another clue about Madame Gazelle's true origins. The most famous vampire in the world is Count Dracula, and according to the legend, he had 3 vampire brides. So the fact that there are 3 Gazelle sisters is a hint that they're inspired by Dracula's story. Let's not forget that in Madame Gazelle's house, there's a picture of a man, her husband, hanging on the wall. He's dressed in a suit and wearing a top hat, and yep, that's exactly how a count would dress. So that's even more proof that both the man in the photo and Madame Gazelle's sisters are all vampires. So, do you agree now that Peppa Pig really is full of hints that this character has a dark hidden power and that she must be a dangerous vampire secretly living among the other characters? Could Peppa and her friends be in danger? Questions like that? You'll find the answers right here on our channel. That's why we've lined up 2 more awesome videos for you to enjoy. We'll see you in the next one. Until next time.